resource under readings, lessons learned in rural age-friendly communities. Two of our alumni contributed to this conference, and they had their slide decks available to it. Zachary Benedict is a principal of MKM Design in Fort Wayne. They're right on downtown Fort Wayne. John Marin is a graduate of our master's program with the IU Public Policy Institute. He's one of our very active alumni. Zach graduated with his architecture degree from here, and John with his planning degree from here. And so Zach has become very passionate in his practice at Morrison Camp and Menzie about age friendliness in communities, whether it be young or old. And is curious, having grown up in Avila, Indiana, Kendallville, Avila, if anybody's familiar with that portion of the state outside of Fort Wayne, very passionate about the state of rural communities in the state of Indiana and how they can become automatically more age-friendly. And he has started to collect a lot of demographic changes and a lot of trends that he thinks can revitalize rural communities. Now, do you count Muncie as part of that? Do you count Muncie as a rural community? Well, you could definitely look at Albany, Dunkirk, Gaston as part of that. So cities within Delaware County that can start to form themselves around this emerging demographic, and that baby boomers are starting to retire, are of retirement age, do have some income, or are selling some of their real estate and looking to relocate in smaller towns or comfortable neighborhoods. So he has done a ton of presentations around this slide deck that identifies some of the issues, opportunities, as well as some of the problems, and that a lot of these communities are not designed for aging. They're not designed around child friendliness, as you found, and they're not designed around age friendliness because they prioritize the car. And this is, for Zach and myself, this is one of our favorite images of the last 20 years. This is a gentleman from Ohio who was late for his appointment at the gym. So he got into his car to walk his dog with his car. Now, if you look at the street, there's no sidewalks anyway. So there are already impediments to him walking his dog the traditional way. The second, he has to go to a gym. He could have just exercised and walked the dog at the same time. I mean, there are problems already starting to identify with some of the lifestyles that are built in to this demographic and to this generation that we are designing for. And so automotive dependency is one of them, because automotive dependency ends up not only just isolating children in communities, it ends up isolating seniors in communities. So the idea is that we need to start designing communities around the ability to age in place and allow seniors to be more engaged at the local level in a walkable neighborhoods. And so Zach has been involved in citing the AARP study as well, and argues that a lot of the things that we perhaps took for granted in missing middle housing and in walkable communities and in communities that we like to visit, we planners, we love to visit Boston, New York City, New Orleans, San Francisco, because they have a high degree of engagement networks, a high degree of walkability. So we did a charrette down in Bloomington to look at the potential reuse of the former hospital site. They were thinking about closing the hospital, and so that was going to create a huge gap in the middle of the urban fabric. There was some vacant land, about 3 acres, very close to downtown and the Showers building where the city hall is. So we did a fast charrette for one day. He took it back to Fort Wayne, and they started to present put these graphics together with his team to argue what he calls the Bloomington livability. I'm losing the name now all of a sudden, but it represents the last 3 to 4 acres of vacant land in downtown Bloomington and how it could be energized around senior living very close to the downtown fabric. So for those of you who don't know Bloomington, the farmers market is probably part of the spine. This is the Beeline Trail that runs next to the Showers building and the City Hall, and this winds now north towards the Upland Brewing Company. If you know that part of Bloomington, it's very, very close to the downtown. So these are all SketchUp plus Photoshop. And so their header here and their slider images here, they'll just slide through the images. Some interesting cross sections or cut sections through the SketchUp model to look at some upper floor housing options, street level perspectives showing seniors aging in place, and then this quite prominent promenade, if you will, that's a play on words, that came from a diagram that Zach did. That's Zach and Andy. They are both architecture graduates, and they sort of evolved from that one diagram. That sketch is actually by me. That was done at the charrette, the one-day charrette that we held in Bloomington. So they kindly enough put my marker image into their gallery there. But you can see that that all of this thinking came from a simple hand diagram like that, that started to think about a spine that ran through the property, and then dealing with open spaces and housing and walkable cultural aspects in that location. Yep, good. Excellent. So this is the Showers Building. Showers Building is a former industrial building that now has the City Hall. Upland Brewing is to the north. And so we're looking at, this was the last 3 to 6 acres or so left. As you can see, very close to the courthouse and downtown. The Beeline Trail is a bike trail that runs through. And then if you can make it to a Bloomington Farmers Market on a Saturday morning, all of you should go. It is a fantastic event post-COVID. This entire portion of the trail is filled with vendors. So it's really, for me, for my money, a really special way to spend a Saturday in Bloomington. So this city parking lot is the beginning of the market, but the market now has taken over a good portion of the Beeline. And then the project is starting to evolve already. The Google Earth image is old. It's from 2019 or 18. Yes, right. But this whole part of downtown is booming just in terms of real estate. And so this was a study that looked at the last available acreage in the city. So that's one. Is in Louisville. Am I saying it right? Louisville. Traditions at Beaumont is a smaller development on the southeast side of Louisville. And Google now has the aerials for that. So we just take a look at Traditions of Beaumont. If I can spell. Kevin Rich was a landscape architect / planner that hired me to do some imagery for him. He needed imagery to help win a planning commission variance. He needed imagery to allow him to plan a higher density healthcare environment on this portion of Louisville. Look at the housing around it. Golf course, suburbia. All right, so maybe 2 to 4 density units per acre. So the Planning Commission, Louisville, Jefferson County, said, all right, we'll let you build denser here, but you have to show us that you can accommodate 200 trees on the property. That was their number. That's what he had to do. He had to prove that he could plant 200 trees on the property, and they were going to live with it. It could be as simple as that. One number, one variable, and the thing is approved. So you can see in the aerial here that at least in 2019 it was under construction. It has now been completed. There is the assisted living facility in the middle, which has skilled nursing, has a courtyard so that grandma doesn't run off, and which is important in memory care. And then it has these interesting quadplexes and duplexes. So these are all part of the development, but you can see they're built closer together than perhaps the other suburban lots that are nearby. So it is under construction and or has been completed. So it's a very skillful way that he had to wind the thing around this massive water tower. But he was able, it is completed, I believe. If we go to Street View, it'll give you a character of the houses. These quadplexes, you can see the 4 garages, 4 porches, gang together in a 4-plex. That's the character of the neighborhood now with its initial plantings at its entrance. One architect, it was Ola McGuire and Shook, also known as OMS Corp., served as the architect. So an interesting relationship here between landscape architect / planner doing the site plan, hiring the architect to do the buildings, hiring an illustrator to do the illustration package. The SketchUp models are pretty cool. The assisted living building is probably bigger than our site can handle. Yes, most definitely. It's massive. I believe it's 60 beds, maybe 70 beds. So that's one thing. The garden home is what they call the garden homes are the fourplexes. So that may be an option to investigate further if you're thinking about housing types. Here is the garden home or the fourplex, south elevation. The back all have veranda or arbor kind of covered porches. So there's a back porch as well as a front porch. Can do. The assisted living building is quite massive in comparison. OMS Corp is a long tradition firm in Indianapolis. They've been around almost 100 years. So it's one of the more established architecture firms in India. They did a fantastic job on this particular project. I was really proud to work with them because the quality of their work was top notch. And so Kevin was happy, I was happy, and we did a few illustrations to help sell the idea based on what they were able to give me. So what Kevin wanted me to do was take his plan and take the buildings and his preliminary work. He did a section here, so he did a fast section. Again, typical landscape graphics, right? Typical sections here in marker. He took an AutoCAD plan and rendered it in marker and then scanned it and rendered it in Photoshop. Different workflow, but it works for him, okay? AutoCAD plan had all the topographic lines on it, had the setbacks and the lots. He then he printed that out, took out his markers, he drew all the trees, okay? He scanned that, took it into Photoshop, laid down all that green as a background, and then all the buildings pop. See what that does? It's another workflow, right? It's another workflow between the computer and hand that can generate a site plan quickly. Okay? And he's put out all the lots. He's only dealt with the assisted living building and the fourplexes at the beginning because, well, he didn't want to get intimately involved in the housing models for the rest. But you notice what he does. He uses the diagramming language to continue the plan with the idea that it's going to connect other things. He doesn't end it like it's in a cake pan or a Pyrex bowl. The development is intended to connect to other things. So he's using diagramming language similar to what we've trained you in site analysis graphics to show the continuation of the development further. But it's an interesting workflow from AutoCAD to hand to Photoshop to do a site plan. And he's got shadows and everything, has a certain pop to it in terms of its readability. So those are good things. The planting plan, which again, he had to prove to the county that 200 trees could be planted on the site. And that was simply an aesthetic, environmental thing. The neighbors were concerned that a large building like the assisted living facility would feel too dense for the neighborhood. So they had to prove that he could fit in 200 trees. That's a variance. That was the variance that he was seeking to achieve. So what I did for him, I did a new entrance motif. So I printed out a SketchUp model and traced over it with my trees and my plants and my growies and my markers and my colored pencils. So a combination of SketchUp. Did a forecast for the housing area with all the trees grown up. Ola McGuire and Shook, OMS Corp provided some model house plans for that, so I was able to draw off of those. And then he needed a large isometric of the entire site to prove, once again, that 200 trees could be planted on the property. So I took the SketchUp model, placed it on his site plan, printed it out in isometric view, traced over it with Canson paper and markers, colored pencils. About 6 hours later, that's what I had. So the client was happy in that we were able to take the work of the landscape architect and the architect and fuse it together into this image, which was part of the development application tool, so that Jefferson County would allow him to build at this level. So good example of senior living, a higher density senior living example on a pretty tight site. I didn't even realize how tight or boxed in the site is until construction began. You can see, though, that there is housing all the way around it. So that is why it required a planning variance in that case. Okay. What else? Those are all linked to, oh, okay. A more local example is Elmcroft. If you want a local example, one that you can drive and go visit, Elmcroft is similar in density and character. It's right on Morrison Road, south of Walmart. You can even ride your bike there. Morrison Road now has a bike trail next to a gated community, which gated communities make me angry. But Elmcroft has a combination of quadplexes, assisted living, and memory care on site. That is another example of a development that has housing types that could work for a higher density senior living concept. Okay, so memory care and assisted living are up front. These independent living villas, they're called, are not rented, they are sold, and it's under a different interesting price point and an interesting sales agreement. Goodness sakes, what is that? Oh, it's somebody's corn. Anyway, so and here it looks pretty good from the street, though. It does have a nice architectural character to it. And it fits in with the Indiana landscape. The thing is that all the houses are the same. They're all the same. So there's that. They're all the same siding, all the same roofing. But that's another example of a quadplex that could be interesting for you to look at as an example of two duplexes joined together with a large garage. That's all it is. It's two duplexes facing away from each other, and you can see how the auto court fits in. That's two-car garage, two-car garage, two-car, fourplex. So. Another intentional community is our tribal communities. Our Native American tribes across the country, fresh with new revenue, whether it be gambling or real estate or otherwise. That is the Soaring Eagle Casino in Mount Pleasant, the largest casino between Connecticut and New York. A net worth or net gain per day of over $1 million. They bring in $1 million every day. Yes, now they're expanding. Yeah, they're expanding into other properties. So they now have casinos in more than one place. Across the state, they bought our Holiday Inn, so they have an indoor water park, which is great. Restaurants, cultural center called the Zibowing Center, fantastic museum that tells their story the way they want it to be told. So if you wander up this way, most folks who travel north from Muncie go right by my hometown on their way north. So pull off and check out the casino. It is an interesting architectural planning project by itself. It is a massive campus. This is called Andawad, and its design and its ordering system are based on sacred image, going back into the triple traditions. So a lot of their traditional feasible and traditional folk art is reflected in the geometries of this facility, but also in the way that Native American tribes honor their elders. They take care of their elders. So a lot of the tribes across Michigan and the upper Midwest and the East have fantastic senior living care facilities and senior living communities. So if you're interested in that aspect of senior living, so take a look at some of the senior living and elder care facilities that tribes are building around the country, because those are lucrative projects for architects and planners, but also with the new state of gambling revenue that many of these tribes have, they're able to reinvest it back into their elders and their children. So really some wonderful things that they're doing. And this is just one example of a full circle, literally, level of care from assisted living to memory care to skilled nursing, right on that one site. So that's another type of facility, both in terms of type, building type, and size that we might consider for your high density option. First day, beginning with understanding how big an acre is. And my rule of thumb is look for a football field. Okay, so a football field is roughly the size of an acre. So if you need a visual reference whatsoever, there's that. If you click on any lot in Beacon, it'll tell you how many acres it is. If you draw any box in SketchUp, it will tell you how many square feet it is. So those are key things. I mean, once you have a scaled model, any shape that you draw in SketchUp, you click on it, it will tell you how many square feet it is. So as long as you know how many square feet an acre is, you can estimate any block of land. And then when we get into what those numbers mean, density units per acre, living units per acre, those are numbers that we legislate when we write a plan. These are some of the key numbers that we write into a comprehensive plan that tell us what we can develop and what is allowable in an area. An estimation of how many acres they were going to allot to those things. Then developers have to follow two numbers, FAR and density units per acre. When they design, lay out a subdivision, or lay out a site plan, they are following two numbers, FAR and density units per acre. FAR is the floor area ratio of a site, the carrying capacity of a site. One story that has 100% lot coverage has an FAR of 1 to 1. A one-story building on an entire lot is an FAR of 1 to 1. That's not allowed anywhere, virtually anywhere, okay? In typical situations, we need side yards and setbacks for lots of things. We need to run utilities, we need to create fire separation, we need a place to put stormwater off the roof. So we create an FAR and minimum setbacks as a way of understanding that the building is not going to occupy the entire site. We need space for parking, we need space for water, and we need space for fire separation, we need space to run utilities. However, if you put a two-story building on 50% of that lot coverage, it's still a FAR ratio, floor area ratio of 1 to 1. Because a two-story building that occupies half is still the same as if it were, at least in terms of its floor area, 1 to 1. A four-story building with 25% lot coverage is still an FAR of 1 to 1. So if you're going to allow four-story buildings, you still reach that point of 1 to 1. However, most suburban development does not reach those numbers. Okay? Land use assumptions. Commercial except downtown, 0.25 FAR. No more than one-story building on 1/4 of the lot. What do you get? You get McDonald's, Burger King, Arby's, right? That's what you get. You get space for parking, you get space for circulation, you get space for utilities, space for stormwater. With a typical commercial FAR of 0.25. Look at how this was copied all the way down. For most land uses, commercial downtown, office professional, office general, industrial light, you can build on a quarter of that lot. A one-story building on a quarter of that lot. Or a two-story building on an eighth of that lot. Doesn't happen often. Heavy industrial, 0.05. The bigger your industrial building, the bigger the lot has to be. Okay. Population per dwelling unit is estimated to be 2.82. The average American family is 2.72, right? But they are assuming that a single family in this part of the country has 2.82 people in it. That is falling, by the way. Less suburban homes have children in them. More and more single families are occupying, are single parent households, or single people are occupying suburban homes. Multifamily, it's assumed that there is just under 2 people per dwelling unit. Now it gets interesting. So those numbers tell you your lot coverage, your maximum lot coverage for most new buildings. When you set the target dwelling units per acre, residential estate, this type of housing in this community is 0.5 to 2 dwelling units per acre. So one house could be 2 football fields. One house could be half a football field. And for those of you who grew up in the country, who had to mow lawns for 4 hours on a Saturday, that's how big your lot was. I had friends who took 7 hours to mow their lawn. I don't know why they had much lawn. They could grow food instead, but okay? But that's the type of lot you get when you legislate this type of density. Low is 1 to 4. Low is where most of you probably grew up, okay? Johnson County, Hamilton County, Allen County. That's where I grew up, okay? I grew up in a neighborhood that was 2 to 3 density units per acre. Low to medium is 4 to 9. The neighborhood I live in right now is about between 7 and 9. Old West End and Muncie, large Victorian era homes split into apartments. 4 to 9 units per football field. Medium to high, they're calling 9 to 15. 15 is the highest end that they will consider. 15 just gets you to the Chicago townhouse. That's the upper echelon that they will accept in this community, is a Chicago townhouse. To give you some pictures to what those mean, what those numbers mean. Okay? You go bigger, like urban, and you're looking at 3 as a base FAR, 6.6 max FAR. You can have up to 6.6 of the lot. And this is downtown. It's like downtown Grand Rapids, downtown Ann Arbor, downtown Indianapolis. You're looking at those types of numbers. And other types of commercial building types, industrial building types, and layouts for those. But when it comes to numbers, we live less dense than the rest of the world. Okay. Compared to Manhattan, compared to Mumbai, compared to Hong Kong, we're looking at numbers that are significantly smaller. And then I just have a bunch of more image-based slides, but I want to get back to the examples I have for numbers. The typical affordable home in Muncie that was developed here at the college reaches 4 to 6 density units per acre. So 6 houses on a football field. And that gets you a 3-bedroom, single-family home on a narrow lot. Chicago, the Chicago row house gets you, what do we have? 20, up to 20 density units per acre, because a Chicago row house could very well be a single family, double, or even triple family. So townhomes and row houses get you to that next level of density. Go bigger, you go to what we call the Parisian block, perimeter block. occupying a whole block with a courtyard. This is typical in Spain, France, North Africa. The typical perimeter block housing gets you to 66 density units per acre. 66 units on one football field. See the difference now? The range is pretty wide. So we go from residential estate to suburbia to dense urban fabrics. Right? Your site will probably accommodate maximum with senior living a target of anywhere from 14 to maybe 20. Once you start putting senior living apartments into it, it starts to increase. But you can achieve 66 density units per acre with a Parisian style block that occupies an entire urban block and rises to 4 and 5 stories. That's the density of, well, the Village Promenade is an example of that, right? Village Promenade is 5 stories around a courtyard, okay, and it occupies the entire block. That's approximately 60 density units per acre. So once you as a planner are able to put a picture to these numbers, then you can select building types that are appropriate for the site. Yes? Once you can assign a picture to what these numbers mean, you can select buildings that are appropriate for that site. Okay. Yes? Okay. Does that help continue to put that picture together? Here's a charrette we did in Topeka, northern Indiana, just south of Mishawaka. I had 90 minutes to make this drawing. So we were looking for some houses that were at 4, some houses that were at 6, and some houses that were at 8. And so we go from single family to row homes very quickly. So that's, in my fast chicken scratch, that character of traditional urban lots is what we were choosing for. The traditional urban fabric with the grid, with tree-lined streets, and with pocket parks is what we were going for with this proposal. And we were shooting for a key number of houses with minimum acreage. So that's how we started to approach it, was a combination of 4, 6, and 8 density units per acre with lot sizes that accommodated that. Very typical new urban thinking. Very typical and consistent with new urbanism. So walkable destination style urbanism. Okay? Does that help put a picture to what those numbers are?